Hi, my name is Gudrun from GE Designs, and in this demo video I want to show you the Stripology XL ruler and how you can use it for all your cutting needs for quilting. So let's take a look at it. It's a large piece of acrylic, so probably one of the largest rulers you've ever seen. But this is a slit ruler, so it has slits every ½ inch. So where you put your rotary cutter blade into the slits, and the slits will guide your cuts. How it's different from other slit rulers, it is a Creative Grids product. So on the whole back side, you have the standard Creative Grids grip, so it will not move on your fabric. So it's very sturdy, which makes your cuts much more accurate. So let's give you some basic things about the ruler. You can use this ruler to cut anything you need for quilting. So from any pattern, from cutting your strips and then subcutting your strips into squares and rectangles. And then this ruler also has squaring up markings for any size block up to 12½ inches. This ruler also gives you the opportunity to cut 45 and 60-degree diamonds and triangles. So let me just start with the basics and show you how to cut your fabric from full width fabric. What you want to do is take your fabric, and you have a bolt fold just right as it comes off the bolt. If your fabric comes off the bolt really crooked, I recommend ironing your whole piece, refolding it so the selvages are semi-aligned. And what you want to do is just take your bolt fold and fold it all the way over the selvages. So now your bolt fold is up here, and you've created another fold down here. So the key thing for our strips to be straight is that this fold and the top fold need to be perfectly parallel, so our strips are straight and don't have any elbows in them. So once I have my fabric folded, I bring my ruler over, and this ruler has both white and black lines, so we can kind of choose to use either white or black depending on what color fabric we have. So I will just line up any line. So here's a white line, I can pull it down if I want to use the black line, and I align that with the bottom fold. And then I check up here to see if my fabric is straight. If it's not straight, it's a little crooked, so I will just adjust my fold just a little bit and then try again until I'm happy with it. So we'll try again. This looks much better. So now I'm ready to cut. Before I cut too, I want to make sure that all of my raw edges of the fabric are to the left of that zero slit. We start off by cutting through the zero. That cleans off our edge, squares up our fabric. So there's no need to do that before folding our fabric. We do that all in one sweep. So you can use either a 45mm cutter or a 60mm cutter. I do recommend nothing smaller than that because we are going to be cutting through the ruler, through the fabric, and not just on the edge of a ruler like we are doing with other rulers. So with a 45mm cutter, you can cut up to 4 to 6 layers of fabric. If you have a 60, you can go up to possibly 8 to 10 layers. I'm going to be using the 45, so you can use any cutters that manually where you can pull that blade guard back, either the straight handle or the ergonomic cutters where you compress the handle to push the blade out. The only cutters I don't recommend using are the ones where you have to push down to get the blade out, because that will damage your ruler down here if you try and do that with this ruler. So now that we're ready to cut, you want to make sure that you place your blade into the bottom teardrops of the slits. And I like to do that by just kind of laying my cutter a little bit on the side. It kind of becomes natural after a while, and so that I'm making sure that the blade is completely in the slit, and then I straighten my hand out so that the cutter is going to go straight through the slit. You don't want to start pushing the blade into the grooves, because then you can also start chipping away at your ruler. So just let it drop in and then straighten it all the way out before you start pushing. So this first cut, all you want to do if you're right-handed, just put 2 fingers on that little lip. You don't have to worry about the ruler moving because it will hold the fabric in place and not move at all. So just 2 fingers here if you're right-handed. If you're left-handed, you obviously can use your right hand to hold the ruler. but just be sure to not get your fingers in the way. And then we're just going to move right through the slit. And you can cut any size strip you need for whatever pattern you're using. I want to show you a couple of shortcuts. We have 2.5-inch markings with these black squares, and then 1.5-inch markings with the black stars. So if you need to cut a lot of 2.5 or 1.5-inch strips, these are easy and makes it so easy you don't have to do any math. So let me just show you by cutting some 2.5-inch strips. So I just look for the symbols and I don't have to calculate. I can just count how many strips I need. So as you can see, this is a lot faster because we're not moving the ruler every cut. But here's my favorite part. Every single strip is going to be exactly the same size because we're not moving the ruler, we're not measuring, and sometimes the lines are on top of the fabric, sometimes we're off. And then when we do those long cuts, sometimes we get a little bit off. So your accuracy is going to improve immensely by using the ruler. But let me show you the biggest time-saving aspect comes into play when we have to subcut our strips. So your pattern tells you to cut strips for your pattern and then for your project, and then it tells you to cut your strips into squares and rectangles, right? So we are going to stack up our strips. And I like to make multiple stacks because I like to be as efficient as possible. So I'm just using the lines on my cutting mat to lay my strips out to begin with. And so you could be having 3 to 4 strips in each stack and have multiple stacks going down the length of your cutting mat. And so you're going to be cutting all of those at the same time. Before you start cutting, I actually put my ruler on top. And you want to make sure that you're using the lines on your ruler and make sure that all the strips are straight before you start subcutting. So you can adjust them and make sure they're straight. And then the ruler will hold everything in place. And so you can cut all those strips at the same time. So let's say you need some 3-inch rectangles. So these are 2.5-inch strips, but we need 3-inch rectangles. I just want to show you that because you already know about the shortcuts. So we start going through the 0. I like to lay my strips so that the selvages are on the left side so that if I have a leftover, I get more use out of my fabric. So I'm going to just cut by 3s. And that is something that we, I think, learned in kindergarten to count by 3s, didn't we? So time to refresh. We go through the 15 and the 18. Now the slits on the XL ruler go up to 20. However, if you ever need to cut on the 21 and your fabric is wide enough, the lip on this edge is exactly 1 inch, so the edge of the ruler is exactly 21. And so this lip is exactly 1 inch too, so the ruler from edge to edge is 22. Just something that's really good to know. So now you have your rectangles all cut up in just a few seconds, and the best part is they are all the same size. Even though the ruler has slits every 1/2 inch, it's very easy to cut 1/4 inch increments if your pattern calls for it, or as for me, I love to cut 2 1/4 inch strips for my binding. So let me show you how to do that. You can find a chart on my website to print out. There's a small chart that comes with a ruler, but this is much easier to see and has all these different 1/4 inch increments. So you just find the 1/4 inch increments that you need to cut. I have this one marked out, the 2 1/4 inch strips, because that's my favorite size for binding. So we're going to cut this one. So at first, all I'm going to do, I'm going to put this on this side so you can see it, is we have our fabric lined up just like we would for cutting regular strips. We start by cutting through the 0, cleaning off that edge. And then I'm just going to go to this first column, and these are the exact slits I'm going to cut through. So I'm going to cut through the 4 1/2, the 9, and the 13 1/2. And then after doing that, I'm going to remove the sliver. So there's removing that little sliver, and we're going to move the ruler over. So removing the sliver we cleaned off, and then we're going to slide the ruler to the right, and then lining that cut edge of the fabric up with that 1/4 inch line. There's a dotted line just left of the 0. So now our fabric is lined up with that 1/4 inch line. And I go back to my chart and look at the second cuts. So my second cuts are going to be at 2 inches, 6.5, and 11. So you can keep going with those cuts, it just depending on however many strips you need. So 2, 6.5, and then 11. Let's say I just needed 6 strips, so there they are, 2 1/4 inch strips, all ready to go. So this would also apply if you needed to cut those 1/4 increment strips into rectangles or square. You would just go by this chart and everything goes together super easy. The Stripology XL ruler is also a squaring up ruler for any size block up to 12.5 inches. So let me show you how that works. So we have on this left side of the ruler, we have black squares starting in the corner and extending out. Those black squares we're going to use if you need to square up a block that's a whole inch size. So 4, 5, 6, 7 inch, 8 inch, and so on. Every square has a diagonal line going through it both ways that you can use up to line up with your seams of the block and so on. For your 1/2 inch sizes, we have a turnaround feature. On the other side, you will notice white squares starting in the middle and extending out, and those you will use for 1/2 inch sizes. So we have 6.5, 8.5, and so on. A diagonal line in white to line up with your seams. We have a center line going through it as well. And then down here, you have the exact sizes of the blocks, so it points to the slits that you're going to cut through when you're squaring up. So let me show you how that works. We are going to be squaring up this block, which is from my Lucy quilt. And this is going to be squared to a 8 inch block. And I like to use my ruler stickers, the arrow stickers, whenever I'm squaring up because it makes everything so much easier to see. So I will take my stickers, and so finding that 8 inch square, I will just go up the left side, find my 8 inch block, and here is that black square. So I like to put arrows on the 4 corners of that square that I'm going to be squaring up to. The extra bonus with that is also that arrow is just pointing at that diagonal line that I'm going to need to use to line up with my seams. The second thing I like to mark, just to eliminate mistakes, I take a different color and I put that at the bottom of the slits that I'm going to be cutting through, because if I'm trimming a whole bunch of blocks, it's so much easier to have those marked to eliminate the mistakes. So this is how this block gets squared up. I need to put a line, that diagonal line on that center seam. So I line that up. You see how easy that is? And then that other line through here is going to land at that corner of that triangle. A couple of other things with that block. We want to make sure that these 2 triangles are equal distance from this line, which you can kind of see in the pattern, and much detailed instructions on that. But now I have things lined up, and you want to just make 2 cuts, just 2 vertical cuts through the 0 and then through the 8, just what you marked. And then we're going to turn the block. I like to remove my cut slivers, and then we're going to do the other sides. So now that you have 2 sides already cut, all you have to do is line that black line at the top and bottom. That should be even with that 2 trimmed lines, and then the diagonal line is going to go again right on that seam, and then you're automatically positioned in the right spot. So one question that I've gotten with squaring up, since those black lines are kind of thick, so people wonder, how are you using the top of the line or the bottom of the line? How can you know exactly where your piece is centered? And here's the thing. This line, you can use either the top of the line, the bottom of the line, or the middle. It really doesn't matter because we are cutting this way. So whether you position it up or down, it's not going to matter in the final cut. So now we just make the 2 cuts again. And then we have a perfectly squared up block. I love using the Stripology ruler for squaring up because not only helps, all the lines will help me find my markings and line up things for my block really fast. But if I happen to have a block that has thick seams, what will happen is the slits will just lift up so slightly wherever there's thickness in my block, but the other slits will hold my block in place, so you'll never have the trouble of your ruler dancing on top of your block. So the last piece I want to show you about the ruler is that it allows you to cut your strips into 45 and 60-degree diamonds and triangles. So let me show you how that works. We have the lines. This is a 60-degree line, and here's your 45-degree line. And this actually goes both ways. If you're cutting diamonds, you're only going to use those bottom two lines, and then I'm going to show you how you use the top ones to cut your diamonds into triangles. So this allows you to adjust any pattern that uses a 60-degree ruler to adjust it to using the Stripology ruler. So I have a strip here. This is a 4-inch strip, and so I've just laid it along the 60-degree line on my mat. And so now I'm going to take my ruler and align that 60-degree line along the bottom of the strip. So this could be done with any size strip, of course. That could be done with a piece strip. And so now I'm going to cut it starting on the 0. So I'm cutting 60-degree diamonds, and it's a 4-inch strip, so I want to cut in 4-inch increments. So I cut on the 4 and the 8 and the 12, and then I'm going to cut on the 16. Now as you can see, the 16, the ruler is a little bit too short for the 16. So here's what we do. We just remove that first little sliver, and I'm just going to slide my ruler upwards. So now I'm aligning that line, 60-degree line, with the top of the strip, and then we can make sure that everything is lined up perfectly, because there's a line that goes from the 0 slit and extends all the way down, so it can be aligned with that first cut piece. So I know things are lined up properly, and I can just go through the 16 and finish my cut. You probably wouldn't need to do that with a skinnier strip, but now this gives me my diamonds. If you were to cut triangles, all you do is now turn your ruler. Here's that 60-degree line going the other way, and it has a little bit of a short extended line out to the edge. So you're just going to align this top line with the top of the units cut, and that extended line is going to be even with the edge of that first cut as well. And so again, I'm going to go through the 0 and then 4-inch increments. So the 4 and the 8. We don't have to go through the 12 because that is too short. And now you'll see that my diamonds have been cut into triangles. So that just gives that ruler extra versatility, and of course speeds up the process whenever you're needing 60-degree diamonds, triangles, or parallelograms cut for a pattern. I hope you enjoyed learning some more things about the Stripology XL ruler. You can find more of my videos here at the Fat Quarter Shop YouTube channel or my own YouTube channel, GE Designs. And then you can find all the links to my videos and to my Facebook page on my website, gequiltdesigns.com. Thanks for watching.